The Xbox Series X is a console that is all about continuity. Yes, it's a new generation of hardware. It's a huge leap forward in terms of raw power, but it is building on the strengths of the Xbox One X in some of the most logical ways it can. There's a continued drive for the Xbox to be the most powerful console on the market, and this has led Microsoft down a particular design to accommodate that raw power. But is next gen really just about power? What's been clear ever since this reveal is that the Xbox Series X form is one that follows its function. It's effectively a wind tunnel with a single large fan at the top that is able to draw enough air to cool the now much more powerful components, while still remaining exceptionally quiet. Needing to capture video for this review, I have sat within a meter of this thing while playing, and I sometimes have to lean in to hear that yes, the fan is quietly whooshing. It's also impressively compact for what it manages to do, thanks to the vapor chamber heatsink and the split motherboard design. Yes, it still ends up being big, and it is awkward to fit into many TV cabinets, and yes, it is still worthy of all of those fridge memes, but if you put it next to a PlayStation 5, it actually feels small somehow. Then again, it's not the most aesthetically pleasing design. The only real flourish comes from the concave fan grille at the top with a secretive green layer that gives a pretty neat optical illusion as you get closer to the console. But there's an unmistakable awkwardness in how it accommodates both the upright and horizontal positions. There's the circular rubberized stand on the base that you cannot remove, and then there's four rubber little feet on one side so that it can be laid flat. It's a bit like someone wearing toe shoes to a cocktail party, where yes, they look smart, but as soon as someone looks down, they go, huh. But it does remove some of the fuss of fitting the console into your TV setup. There's no stand to attach to the bottom like there was with the Xbox One X, and it can still lay flat. In general, the whole 2001 A Space Odyssey monolith look can actually fade into the background over time, similar to a subwoofer or how you tuck bookshelf speakers away. But if you do want to put it into a TV cabinet, then it's not very deep, and therefore you can push it further back to conceal it a bit more. One of the clearest indications of this continuity that Microsoft have been aiming for is with the new Xbox controller, which we have got a separate review about over on the sixaxis.com. It subtly refines the existing Xbox One controller, making it slightly more compact, adding a new share button, and crafting a new D-pad disc that is based off the one found on the Xbox Elite controllers. I find this D-pad nice to use. I think it could be a boon in fighting games, for example, but it's annoyingly clicky, making me actually start using the analog stick to get around menus, and also making me very glad that you can continue to use older controllers. While it doesn't have any flashy new features like adaptive triggers, there are still the rumble triggers that debuted with the Xbox One, and there's a hope that developers will maybe start to use these much more consistently, as they can still provide an impressive amount of immersion when used well. The system software is, as we've known for a long time, it's shared with the Xbox One. It's identical aside from a handful of features. Honestly, the Xbox user experience is in a fairly happy place right now. It's fast, it's responsive, and very customizable, and you can easily filter and group your games. You can also remove almost all of the clutter that you don't want. If you're coming from the Xbox One generation to the Series X, you can just log in with your Xbox account and you will have your profile immediately downloaded. Everything will be exactly where you put it before. You can also just plug in a hard drive and those games will immediately start to work or get their updates going. It's actually kind of refreshing that Microsoft haven't reshuffled the layout given how often they've done so through the Xbox One's lifetime. Aside from the recent visual spruce up, it's been consistent through the last year or so. The headline new feature is really quick resume, which allows you to hop back and forth between games as you wish. As we've been reviewing the console, Microsoft have been putting the finishing touches to this system, identifying the games that, for whatever reason, aren't working quite right. They're aiming to fix these issues by next week's full launch. But what I can say is that when it works very well, allowing you to have a handful of games on the go at once and swapping back and forth between them pretty seamlessly. Depending on the game, it takes between 5 and 15 seconds in our experience. Something like the Falconeer will feel almost instant, but then you'll have a little bit longer to wait if you're loading up Forza Motorsport 7, for example. It means that you can have a run through the campaign of Gears Tactics ready and waiting for you to return to while you go and join your friends for some Destiny 2 multiplayer. Of course, online games such as Destiny 2 will still kick you back to the main menu with an unseemly error message, just as they do when resuming on the current generation. And so we come to the games and the paucity of real next-gen gaming that we've been able to experience so far. It's this factor that is the biggest reason why we will not be scoring this console review just yet, as we wait for the likes of Watch Dogs Legion, Dirt 5 and others to be declared ready for testing on Xbox Series X. So, in the meantime, we've been jumping back and forth between backward compatibility titles and those that have been updated for the Series X. Even here, the Xbox Series X can shine. Its added power irons out some of the kinks and limitations of the Xbox One and One X. Forza Horizon 4 is simply presented to you in 2160p and 60 frames per second. There's no need to pick a performance mode. Gears 5 now delivers 60 FPS in the campaign, where it was 30 FPS before. And there's the option of 120 FPS in multiplayer if you have a monitor or TV that supports it. All of that is done while also enhancing visual effects and using higher detail assets. Sea of Thieves, well, it's just 60 FPS. Microsoft have put a lot of effort into making sure that some of their most notable current games are updated for the Series X. And it means that the Series X can just get it done. These games have either been given a dedicated update to recompile for the new console, or in Sea of Thieves' case, it's been made aware of the new console and presents a new frame rate and resolution targets. We've also tested out 120 frames per second, thanks to the wonderful flexibility of the Xbox software to easily accommodate all manner of TVs and screens that support high refresh rates. You can also still do non-typical resolutions like 1440p, which is more commonly seen on PC. Asus have loaned us a VG279QM monitor for this review, which can do 1080p at up to 280Hz. Obviously we're not pushing that limit, but we did dive into Gears 5 multiplayer, and yeah, it sure is 120 FPS. It's truly remarkable to have this kind of capability on the new consoles, and it makes the games just that bit more fluid and adds to how responsive they feel. It's something that we can't actually show in video on YouTube yet, because YouTube only goes to 60 FPS, and that's why we're having to play things back at half or quarter speeds to show the difference. The other big advancement for this generation is the SSD, and it holds a lot of potential, but for backward compatibility games, it hasn't really made loading screens vanish into nothingness. That said, it can help dramatically reduce them. Just to take one example, 2016's Hitman, loading from an external hard drive into the Paris level takes between 50 and 65 seconds depending on the console. There's already a bit of an uplift here as the Series X can power through asset decompression much quicker, and so depending on the game, you can actually have a sizable impact and reduce those load times quite a bit. But if you put it on the SSD, that initial load time to get to the Paris level plummets to just 15 seconds. Yes, it still feels like a loading screen, but it's barely time to pick up your phone and refresh Twitter. It's an impressive step forward, but I will say that the SSD does throw up a minor little niggle for me here. All Series X and S optimized games have to be run from the SSD, whether it's a big budget AAA game or a small indie title. Should indie games like Goner 2 or The Falconeer really require its use? I would say not, and I'd even be happy to have the option of playing the One X version of a cross-gen title if that meant that I could save space on my internal SSD. Unfortunately, Smart Delivery prevents you from doing that. It will always give you the Series X or the appropriate version for that console. But at the very least, the Xbox system is flexible. You can copy or move Series X optimized titles to an external drive and use that to clear up space, only to then copy them back if and when you want to play them next. The vast majority of the back catalogue, though, has not been optimised for the Series X, and your experience here will depend on what these games offer up for the Xbox One X. Some games have been made fantastically flexible, such as Hitman again, which gives you independent options for either prioritising the frame rate or the resolution, and also then for unlocking the frame rate. The Series X quite simply lets you play in 4K with a pretty consistent 60 FPS, making it a similar no-compromise experience to Forza Horizon 4. There's also quite a few games in the One X enhanced catalogue that shot for a native 4K and did so at the cost of having a slightly shaky frame rate. The Series X will be able to power through and resolve those kinds of issues. But if you go further back to something like Just Cause 3, the Series X boost will be limited to just steadying it out at 900p and 30 FPS, as the game only ever supported the base Xbox One and set its resolution targets lower in the name of performance. It is here that Microsoft's backward compatibility team can hopefully start to step in. At launch, there's the implementation of Auto HDR, which uses machine learning to augment the color gamut and luminosity of games without HDR support and expand those ranges to make use of your HDR TV. There's some games where it doesn't work quite so well. Microsoft have notably disabled Auto HDR for GTA 4, but the rest of the time, it's another thing that the Xbox kind of just does automatically. It adds a light enhancement, pun intended, without intruding too much. If you don't want it though, you can turn this off in the granular video output settings. But I don't really see a need to turn it off. To be honest, I was playing Fallout 4 and I forgot that it doesn't natively support HDR until I loaded up again on Xbox One X for comparison and realised that my TV wasn't switching modes. Still, there's more to come from this team. A few weeks ago, they used Fallout 4 as an example of their ability to double the frame rate cap of a game through backward compatibility. No patches, no updates, just natively done. I was eager to try it, but 60 FPS is not yet ready for us to test. It's another little annoyance during this review process not to have that access, but it's still an exciting prospect for us to revisit in future. Hopefully, Microsoft can spread such enhancements far and wide across the library of thousands of games, but we expect it to be relatively selective, to be fair. So, the Xbox Series X, it's really the continuity candidate. It's built on the foundations of familiar system software and comprehensive backward compatibility, and it can actively enhance pretty much everything you want to play on it, within limits. It's also effectively silent. No matter how hard we've managed to push it so far, you will not hear this over the sound of your games. But at this time, we're still on the outer threshold of seeing what it can offer for the next generation of gaming, and we'll be exploring that over the coming days, weeks and months as games are made ready for us to review in this setting. What's certain is that you will want a high-end TV or monitor to get the very best out of it, and that if you're coming from a base PS4 or Xbox One in particular, this is a huge step forward. This is truly a next-generational leap in terms of what the console can do. Thanks as ever for checking out our video. You can also head over to the 6thAxis.com where we've got this coverage and plenty more in written form. You can also like, subscribe, share, click the bell button and keep tabs on this particular YouTube channel where we will have more videos for Xbox Series X and PlayStation 5 over the next few days, weeks, months and so on. Hopefully we will see you again soon. Goodbye.